He wrote about people turning into bugs, yet he never knew his books would change the world. In 1924, Franz Kafka died from tuberculosis, utterly convinced he was a failure. He left instructions for his life's work to be burned, but from the ashes of that request, a prophet emerged. His strange, unsettling stories became a mirror for the modern world. How did this quiet insurance clerk from Prague foresee the alienation, the absurd bureaucracy, and the deep-seated anxiety of the 21st century? His life holds the key. The seeds of this prophetic anxiety were sown early, in the winding, gaslit streets of turn-of-the-century Prague. Here, Franz Kafka was a permanent outsider. Caught between worlds, he was a German-speaking minority in a city fiercely embracing its Czech identity. He was a secular Jew in an increasingly anti-Semitic Christian society. He was a sensitive artist in a family that worshipped only the brute force of commerce. His alienation was so profound, it was even etched into his name. In Czech, Kafka means jackdaw, a common black bird. His own father's business logo featured this very bird, branding the boy with an animal symbol from birth, a constant, public reminder of his otherness. But the deepest shadow was cast by one man, his father, Hermann Kafka, a towering, domineering figure. Hermann saw his son's artistic soul not as a gift, but as a personal failing, a deep disappointment. This crushing dynamic was crystallized in a single, traumatic childhood memory. For quietly whimpering for water one night, the young Franz was dragged from his bed and locked out on the cold balcony, the Polachen. In that darkness, shivering and alone, the core of his literary universe was forged. It was the terror of an all-powerful, incomprehensible authority delivering a punishment that felt both arbitrary and absolute. This primal fear of the father would echo through every judge, officer, and gatekeeper he would ever write. The cruelty was not just physical, it was psychological. Hermann would later dismiss Franz's friends as vermin, an insult so chillingly precise it seems to have crawled directly from his father's mouth onto the pages of his most famous story. To find a world where he might belong, Kafka looked to the past, becoming fascinated with a traveling Yiddish theater troupe. Their lowbrow art was raw and authentic, a connection to the Jewish roots his assimilated family had tried so hard to erase. It was a desperate search for an identity in a world that had made him a stranger everywhere, especially in his own home. To survive, Kafka led a starkly divided existence. By day, he was Dr. Franz Kafka, a respected and surprisingly competent lawyer at the Workers' Accident Insurance Institute. The image of the miserable, bumbling clerk is a myth. He was a diligent employee who earned promotions and tirelessly advocated for the common worker. And here lies one of the most astonishing paradoxes of his life. This man, whose name would become a byword for oppressive, soul-crushing systems, was instrumental in developing and promoting the civilian hard hat. For his efforts to improve safety for factory and quarry workers, he was even awarded a medal by the American Safety Society in 1912. The prophet of dehumanization was, in reality, a dedicated humanitarian. This day job had a profound artistic influence. The meticulous, dispassionate, and precise legal prose he drafted for his reports became the very tone of his fiction. He wrote of nightmares with the chilling objectivity of an accident report, but this double life exacted a brutal toll on his body. He was tormented by chronic insomnia, crippling migraines, and severe digestive problems. His physical self was a casualty of his internal war. In a desperate bid for control, he turned to obsessive health regimens. He practiced Fletcherism, chewing every bite of food up to 100 times. He performed rigorous, often nude, calisthenics by his open window each morning. These were the frantic rituals of a man trying to govern an ungovernable inner world. He endured it all for the writing he did at night, the work he believed was his only true reason for being. As he famously declared, "A book must be the axe for the frozen sea within us." From the furnace of this double life, Kafka forged the blueprints for our modern anxieties. His great unfinished novels were not mere fantasies, they were precise, clinical dissections of the human soul trapped in illogical systems. Consider the Metamorphosis. The story's enduring horror is not that Gregor Samsa awakens as a monstrous vermin. The true terror is his family's quiet, practical reaction. Their shock quickly gives way to a more pressing concern: the loss of his income. He ceases to be a son and brother and becomes simply an inconvenient burden. This is why Kafka famously insisted his publisher never depict the insect on the book's cover. The horror was meant to be psychological, not literal. Then there is the trial. Here, the terror lies in the complete absence of information. A man, Joseph K., is arrested one morning. His crime? He is never told. His accusers? He never sees them. The court? It is everywhere and nowhere. He is trapped in a web of guilt without a charge, fighting a faceless authority whose rules are a secret. It's the perfect allegory for the modern frustration of dealing with opaque bureaucracy and automated rejections. The novel's core is captured in its famous parable, Before the Law, a chilling tale of a man who waits his entire life for an access he is never granted. Finally, the castle presents the ultimate portrait of paralysis. A land surveyor named K arrives in a village summoned by a mysterious castle he can never reach. His entire existence becomes a desperate, maddening quest for official permission to do the job he was hired for. The castle's power is absolute precisely because it is inaccessible. It traps K, not with walls, but with endless procedures and the perpetual false promise of progress. It is the chilling prediction of a world where we are forever waiting for an approval that will never arrive. His fiction was a labyrinth of guilt and paranoia, and in time, his life began to eerily imitate his art. In 1914, in a stark Berlin hotel room, he faced a real-life tribunal. His fiancée, Felice Bauer, flanked by her friend, confronted him. Their evidence? His own agonized letters, thousands of pages detailing his doubts and fears about marriage, which they now read aloud like a prosecution's case file. It was a scene ripped directly from the pages of the trial, a public verdict delivered upon his private soul. This crippling fear of judgment, this certainty that his work and his very self were fundamentally flawed, haunted him to his deathbed. As tuberculosis consumed him, he drafted a final impossible request for his dearest friend, Max Brod. The command appeared simple and absolute: burn everything. Burn the notebooks, the diaries, the 3 unfinished novels. Erase Franz Kafka from literary history. But like a clause in one of his own inscrutable legal documents, the final request was a masterpiece of ambiguity. It wasn't one command, but 2 separate notes, with a crucial loophole. Brod was instructed to destroy all unpublished papers he could find. Kafka knew perfectly well that Brod was already the custodian of his most important manuscripts. He wouldn't have to search for them at all. Was Brod's decision to disobey a profound betrayal? Or was it the ultimate act of friendship? A realization that Kafka was simply outsourcing the one decision his anxiety would never allow him to make himself. Perhaps Kafka, in his final moments, was laying a bet, a secret hope that his friend would understand the man better than his words. To see Kafka as a figure of pure, unrelenting gloom, however, is to miss a startling paradox. Those who knew him best reported a surprising detail. When reading his bleak, terrifying stories aloud to friends, Kafka would often be overcome with laughter, laughing so hard, with tears streaming down his face, that he would be unable to continue. In the heart of his own darkness, he found a profound, almost hysterical humor. He wasn't just chronicling absurdity, he was recognizing it as a fundamental truth of existence. In the end, Max Brod made his choice. He betrayed the letter of his friend's wish to honor its spirit, and in doing so, he saved the prophet who had tried so desperately to silence himself. And so, Kafka's private nightmares became our public vocabulary. A new word was born: Kafkaesque. It is not simply bizarre. It's the specific, oppressive feeling of an individual trapped in a system that is logical in its absurdity and impersonal in its power. You know this feeling. It is the automated customer service loop. the government website that crashes, the endless terms and conditions, the rejection email from an algorithm. If you've ever felt trapped in a system you can't understand, let us know your Kafkaesque story in the comments. And if you appreciate maps to modern madness, consider subscribing. He died believing he was a failure. A century later, the world calls him a prophet.